Frozen. Okay.
Hey, welcome. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Singer, blueandgold.com. This is our first Irish Huddle live. We are live on YouTube, and we appreciate those who are joining us live. We appreciate those who are watching us back on YouTube. And if you're listening via podcast, we appreciate you as well. Please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. That really helps out our channel. This is going to be something we're doing every Monday here at blueandgold.com, our live show we're really looking forward to.
Yeah, and for you guys who are listening on podcast, this is the normal Monday post-game podcast you're used to. It'll still be myself and Lou. Mike is gracious enough to join us and host us here. So again, if you're listening on podcast, this will be in your feed every Monday night for the course of the season. So if you like us on there and that's your preferred way of listening, this will still be right there. And as always, Lou and I will have your Thursday, in all likelihood, most weeks, Thursday preview podcast and all the usual things there.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, we're doing a recruiting show with myself, Mason Plummer, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. There's a ton going on with recruiting, folks. So that'll be a fun one for sure. And of course, Saturdays after the game, 15 minutes afterwards, we have a live show with Mike Goolsby, former Fighting Irish captain and linebacker. So make sure you're tuned into that as well. We're going to start the show with a little trivia, folks. This question is from Lou Somogyi, so I'll go ahead and read it. Last Saturday at Boston College, Brian Kelly won his 100th career game at Notre Dame, joining Lou Holtz and Newt Rockne in the Century Club with the Fighting Irish. Can you name how many coaches Kelly has defeated during his time here who had won national titles? So I will give you a hint, folks. There are 4. So post your answers. Okay, if you can name 4, if you name a couple, and if you get all of them again, we'll certainly let you know. But we will come back to that. We will leave the question here up for our YouTube audience, so you guys can read that one.
And
I can
Mike,
already think of 2.
Mike, by the end of the month, we hope it goes up to 5.
There's another hint for you guys. Yes, it has the potential to increase this month, and then that should give it away of who number 5 could be. But I can think of 2 off the top of my head.
Don't tell the people,
No,
Patrick.
no. Give the people what they want here. I'm not spoiling this.
All right, let's maybe talk a little Notre Dame football, folks. First, Ian Book. Have you guys heard about him? He's playing some pretty good football, folks. He's really ascended. This is his second full-time year as the Notre Dame starting quarterback, 5th-year senior, playing the best football of his life, guys. Are you surprised at him taking a next step all of a sudden? He seems very confident in the pocket. And I said this on our postgame show Saturday night with Goolsby. I think he's cured his happy feet. Lou, what's your take?
Well, he had to sometimes have happy feet because maybe there wasn't the confidence with the receivers. We've said this all along. September was going to be used kind of to establish the base for Notre Dame, which was going to be the physicality and the running game. October, you're trying to develop a chemistry. So you have your base in September, and in October, you want to get that chemistry. But it's very hard to do that when, okay, you're expecting Kevin Austin back. You need Braden Lenzy to be that deep threat. You were looking at Lawrence Keys at the slot. Oh, and Ben Skoranek. You were hoping that there was that chemistry that P and Book developed over the summer that could develop. Well, all those guys were out with various health injuries, etc. But in the last few weeks, that's transpired much more. They've gotten Skoranek into the game. They've gotten Avery Davis into the game. They've gotten Javon McKinley involved very well. Michael Mayer now has become a major target or a guy that they're looking at. And it all, I think, came together at the perfect time. Because as we said, physicality in September, that's your base. That's going to be your calling card and ID. October, get the receiving core involved. And this is now 2 straight games where the receivers have accounted for over 200 yards receiving. And so it comes together at that perfect time. in November for the Clemson, Boston College, and North Carolina trio, where we felt they needed to take it to that level, and they have.
Yeah, and it's just not just to me trust with the receivers, but just trust in what's happening. And then you mentioned, I think that's a big part of why those happy feet we call it isn't really there anymore. I mean, you saw a great example of it on Saturday where Book hangs in the pocket. It's closing all around him on three sides, really, and it looks like it's about to swallow him up. And he just stands there and then fires a dart over to Avery Davis. It ended up being a 48-yard gain. And that's just the kind of play you think back to like last September and October. It's like he's just not in there to even make that throw at that point. And I really think it is like it's trusting in that receiver is open. Like, yeah, he's actually open. I can throw that. Or, okay, it's 2.5 seconds and this play is still developing. Like, okay, he's going to be open and that's going to be there because I saw this one thing from a defender and that's what I should be seeing to make, this certain throw. So I think you just see a lot of that. And that to me comes from trust in receivers, but also just trust in the relationship that he has with Tommy Rees. And I don't think that factor can be underplayed at all. And of course, trust in a very good offensive line. Once again, it's going to keep him upright. But I think you're really seeing the command and control and confidence of everything that's happening around him and a guy who's playing as if it's not everything is kind of falling back on him like it did at sometimes last year where they weren't as effective running the ball. And of course, you have that already well established, as Lou mentioned. But yeah, you're really seeing now, maybe for the first time in Book's career, or at least the best example of it in Book's career, him in complete control and trust that everything around him works as it should. And it has.
Dude's
And
got confidence. I would add, like he knows he's the man. And I mean, you think about the Louisville game and at the start of the season, it just seemed like it was a continuation of 2019. Very good, a very good college quarterback. But now, Lou is just taking his game to the next level.
And that 91-yard drive against Clemson, those are those seminal moments in one's career where you look back and say, holy smokes, that's when he knew that he could compete against anybody. Because it always had been, yeah, he's a nice, solid quarterback, this or that. He was placed in the most difficult circumstance in that game against Clemson, not only for that 91-yard drive, but also two overtimes where you had to also come back. So I think that mental burden or weight, I mean, quarterbacks or any player will always say, they don't listen to that. They don't care about the noise and that. They just pay attention. Of course, they're human. Of course they do. And when you have that kind of performance on the grand stage against the number one team in the country, you just get that feeling now all of a sudden. And I think it spills over to the rest of the team as well, that if we can do that against them, we can do that against anybody.
And here's the numbers over the last 4 games that I think are a pretty good illustration. Is it 62% of his passes completion rate, 1,104 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, and the one that kind of stands out to me the most, 9.05 yards a pass. That's what you wanted to see as far as, is he going to throw downfield? Will he push the ball? All of those talking points that were there early in the year or even last year. I wrote over the summer, like when he throws the ball downfield, he's actually very good at it. The issue was sometimes just not throwing those balls. Now we're seeing that. Even then, only completed one of those 20 plus yard downfield throws against Boston College, but it didn't really even feel like it was only one, just because you saw a lot of throws in the intermediate area and completing a lot of those. That's where his completion rate kind of fell last year and in the early part of this season. So you see just willingness to throw it into tight windows and single coverage, and the trust with Bennett Skoranek in particular in the red zone to throw 50-50 balls and contested catches, that you have the guy that, he's going to come up with that. If you're booking thinking, if I throw this pass, it's got a shot of being caught. And we saw that against Boston College with the 3 touchdowns they connected for.
Got a tweet up here on the screen. Notre Dame QB Ian Book's grade this season. This is per PFF, Pro Football Focus. First 5 games, a 63 grade, which PFF would grade as kind of average. I mean, it's not an A, B, C, D scale. That's not how PFF does it. 63. I think 60 is actually average. Like, that's their
I
base.
think that's right.
84.3 in his last 3 games. That is a pretty stellar grade there.
Yeah,
We'll
that's cooking.
also pull up his stats here. He's 134 of 216 on the season. That's a 62% clip. 1,818 yards, 11 touchdowns. And guys, I want to touch on quickly the interception total. 1. He takes care of the football. Lou, I mean, how important is that? Even before he really stepped it in that Clemson game, the 91-yard drive, before he's kind of taking this next step, the dude just has always taken care of the football, and I think that's something that fans might overlook.
Ever since I've followed the sport, every single coach I've ever heard, what's your number one requirement for a quarterback? It's not completion percentage or yardage thrown or yardage run for. You protect the football. The ball is going to be in your hands, whether it's on a handoff, whether it's on a pass, avoiding the rush, taking care of the football, ball security is the number one job in the game for any quarterback. So you saw how down he was. He had to shake it off against Clemson when he fumbled into the end zone because that is so rare for him. And all the more reason that mental toughness that was displayed on that final drive just manifests itself. And now I think comes more to the forefront. But he never loses sight that the number one job for him is to protect that football. I mean, you look at a couple of the turning points against Boston College. There's a center snap, and that's not Phil Jacobic's fault, but there's a center snap that all of a sudden goes right past him. That changed the game's momentum. Then Ben Skoranek had that fumble in the third quarter on a 26-yard gain there, and it's like, okay, suddenly Boston College has the ball. What happens on the next play? Jack Kaiser intercepts a pass. So right away, there's that deflating element that comes into play. And that's before you can win games, you don't want to lose them. And he's gone beyond that.
If you had told me the numbers that I read off earlier, just in his last 4 games, or Mike, the PFF grade, you had mentioned that that was going to happen, I would have said, like, yeah, it's okay if there's a couple of interceptions in there as long as they're like aggressive mistakes or ones that come on, like, I'm a dude, I'm going to try to make this throw and try to go big or go for a home run or a tight window or whatever. That hasn't even happened. Like, he's been able to deliver those kinds of aggressive plays or longer throws or tight window throws without the interception risk. So it's kind of like the best possible outcome you could have hoped for. I mean, even at the beginning of the year, I would have said, yeah, if you see a few more completions downfield or intermediate completion rate is a little higher and the interception rate was higher, I think that was an okay trade-off, but he's managed to do one without the other. And yeah, it's hard to find a better mix than that. And overall, just exactly what's showing up, and hard to find a better stretch of 4 games for him in his career.
Couple of housekeeping items before we get into some other topics here. Thank you to Blake Way Panoramas for bringing some Fighting Irish spirit to my home office, which you're watching on YouTube, and you can see behind me in all of these videos here. You can see the entire Notre Dame sports collection at panoramas.com or bluegoldonline.com. Also want to mention, if you're watching us live on YouTube, whether on your phone or your computer, you'll see a little $sign kind of logo there. That is a super chat. It's basically your way of, if you like our show, do you want to give us like a tip? You can certainly tip us a few bucks, whatever you guys would like. That really goes a long way in helping our channel. So please consider doing that for us. We will move to talking about a big news that dropped on Monday in Jarrett Patterson's injury. Patrick, tell us about this, the impact here, and what you're expecting moving forward for Notre Dame. I mean, just a big blow losing your center at this point in the season.
Yeah, it's, I mean, obviously not ideal. The guy had started 21 straight games, which, I mean, in a vacuum sounds very good, but put on this Notre Dame line, it's the fewest number of career starts for any of the five. And yeah, he's not going to play the rest of the year, and that's tough. I would at least guess, or at least to me, I would think the guy who deserves the first look is Zeke Correll, the sophomore early enrollee, I believe, in the 2019 class, top 150 overall recruit. He's been basically working exclusively at center and being kind of groomed for that role whenever Patterson leaves or moves to another position or whatever. I would imagine, just considering the specializing that he's put in there, that you would give him the first look there. And then that's what I would do too, just because it involves the least amount of shakeup. And I know Josh Lugg is the first guy off the bench for multiple positions. We've seen him at right tackle in a couple of the recent games, just filling in for injury. Or right tackle on Saturday, filling in for Robert Hainsey. Right guard, I should say, for Tommy Kramer against Georgia Tech. So kind of that spot starter, put him wherever. I think he took reps at center in a spring practice or spring practices a couple of years ago. But to me, I would go with the guy who you've kind of specifically held here for that role and see what he can do. He's part of a really strong offensive line class they signed in 2019, and I mean, he's played in a couple of games this year, just in mop up duty and garbage time and whatnot. But I would imagine that that's the route they look toward. And to me, what I'm most curious to see with this injury is who replaces him. But if you left the decision to me, well, besides that being a catastrophically bad idea, I would go with Zeke Corral here.
That makes sense. Just because I was anticipating next year that Jarrett Patterson was going to move out to one of the tackle positions because Liam Eichenberg is definitely going to be in the NFL next year. I imagine Robert Hainsey, even though he has the option to come back, he will as well. Jarrett Patterson came in as a left tackle prospect and had never played center in his career. In fact, the entire starting offensive line all were tackles. They moved Aaron Banks to guard. They moved Tommy Kramer to guard because he co-started with Hainsey in 2017. So if Zeke Correll is going to be your center of the future, maybe he's going to be the center of the present now too. I'm not sure about Josh Lugg moving to center. Now, we did see him taking reps there in the spring of 2019. He has been called the Swiss Army knife by Brian Kelly in the line, in that he's the sixth man. He's the next man in for whatever purpose or wherever the need is the greatest. I sometimes have wondered, he's about 6'7", and the leverage part there at center, maybe that can get overrated there, but when you get a nose tackle under you and you're adjusting to a first-time position, that could be quite an adjustment there. I would not be surprised to see Robert Hainsey, especially with the bye week coming up, maybe taking some snaps there as well, because then ideally you still have the great experience with Hainsey, and he knows all the line calls. He's an extremely smart football player. And then having Josh Lugg at that natural right tackle position. I think that is one more option that can be evaluated or looked at. It's a decision that Jeff Quinn and Coach Kelly have to make as far as who gives the best opportunity for this line to not lose the continuity and to have the best chance at making the right calls at center and everything else. Is Zeke Correll ready for all that? I don't know. We'll see if they have that trust factor there. He came in at about 270 last year, and he's about up to like 290 or so. But that's a position where if you get penetration and you get some push by the defensive line, that can create some havoc in the running game or create some problems anyway. So that's just going to be something for the coaching staff to decide, is which five presents the best lineup in that offensive line.
If you're putting Hainsey at center, I think you're doing that only just because you like the experience and want to keep that and not risk anything with Zeke Correll there. I personally wouldn't touch that at all, just because I think Hainsey's athleticism at the tackle spot, especially in this outside zone type of scheme, where so many times they ask him, all right, chip a guy, get to the second level, and set up blocks there on these perimeter outside zone runs where he's getting way out there, 15 yards or so, to pick off a corner or block a linebacker out of there or something, or a slot defender. I don't know that that's as much of a thing that he can do at center, or as much of a thing that Josh Lugg per se would be able to do at right tackle. And that's not to say that Josh Lugg is incapable at all. But we're talking about a guy with plus athleticism at the right tackle spot, and a big reason that's going to get him drafted, I think. So I wouldn't do that, and especially because then you're messing with multiple positions. If you're going to do that, I would just say, all right, stick Josh Lugg at center if you want the experience. That way you've just got that one spot that has the mid-season turnover. So if you want that thing of, okay, we want these older guys, I would just throw Josh Lugg in there at center. But now, to me, if Zeke Correll is your center of the future, I don't know. I think this is a great spot to really give him a shot.
I think one thing we can all agree on, guys, is that whether Notre Dame goes with inserting Lugg in and maybe moving some pieces around, or going with someone more unproven like Ezekiel, Notre Dame's in pretty good hands, right? This is offensive line UE. I don't know if Notre Dame really can go wrong here. I'm sure they could, but it's still just a good thing. Obviously Jarrett Patterson going down is a huge loss, but it's not catastrophic, Lou, because Notre Dame's just recruited so well on the offensive line.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily recruit pure centers. Sam Mustipher had never played center until he came here. I think like Braxton Cave was maybe the last one really who had that. Nick Martin came in as a tackle and guard, and he became a second-round pick at the center position. And, you can eventually adjust there. You look at Alex Bars. He played all four of the tackle and guard positions, and now he's starting for center at center for the Chicago Bears. So, it just might be too quick a turnaround. And I think the one thing that can't be overlooked is just the center snap exchange, especially in shotgun situations. Now at North Carolina or Wake Forest, you're not going to have that crowd noise and all, where maybe you can't hear the signals, or there's a silent count you have to go to, etc. So maybe that eases that transition, but still, that center snap exchange, especially in the shotgun, it's not as easy as it always looks.
We'll go ahead and give the answers to the questions here from the trivia. Bob Stoops, Oklahoma, 2012. Les Miles, 2014 Music City Bowl. Ed Orgeron, 2018 Citrus Bowl in Dabo Sweeney. Of course, 2020. Lou, appreciate you giving us a question. A ton of people were asking us, giving their answer to that question. And I'm scrolling through our YouTube chat here live. Certainly some people were... we had a couple people say Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, but no one got all four. So we appreciate everybody.
And we again hope it's number 5, because Mac Brown led Texas to the 2005 national title as well.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I think that would be, I know Eric Parsegian and Dan Devine and Lou Holtz beat a number of national championship coaches along their career too, but you get to 5. That's a pretty darn good number.
Notre Dame fans want
beating scrub teams.
Notre Dame fans want the most for Brian Kelly to now have a coach who it's the opposite, where Brian Kelly's that national championship.
Yeah. Or you want to ask that trivia question from other teams about
exactly.
Brian Kelly was the last national title coach they defeated.
All right, everybody watching live, watching back, watching replay, please smash the thumbs up button on this video. And please, again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Moving to some running back talk. I think everyone feels really good about the running back position. Kyron Williams, sophomore coming off of his redshirt year as a freshman, absolute stud. Chris Tyree, we all thought he was going to play early. He is proven to be a bona fide stud as well, and he's going to just get better with time. Sibo Flemister, he kind of just comes in for that drive in the second quarter and again later in the fourth quarter, and he's been a reliable back as well. But one thing that I think has been a little bit of concern is the depth. Kyron comes out, Sibo gets hurt, and if, God forbid, something were to happen to Chris Tyree, you're moving back Jafar Armstrong from receiver to running back, or maybe throwing someone in there who's never taken a meaningful carry or even a carry in a college football game. So that's at least how I feel about it. That the trio is very talented, but are you guys worried about the depth for this season? We'll throw it to Patrick first.
If assuming no injuries, no, I'm not, because that's 3 really good running backs. You don't really need any more than that. There's no reason to play, and you just don't see very often like a 4 running back trio. But of course, that's not reality. Just as what we saw the other day, like guys are going to get hurt, and even for perhaps longer. Luckily, it doesn't sound like that's the case with Kyron or Sibo Flemister's deal, but yeah, you'd be okay. Let's just say someone goes down for a minute. All right, you get a little dicey on okay, who's gonna what can you really get from whoever you would have to use there. And even then, I think there have been some games that we've seen that okay, you've only played 2 running backs, and that's fine. Like and sometimes a third is not even really necessary. But yeah, I would be a little leery if, say, you have to start leaning on a Jafar Armstrong. And I mean, I don't know. You're intrigued about like someone like a Kendall Abdur-Rahman, but he hasn't played in a game yet.
Right.
So I would say like, okay, as long as everybody's healthy, no, I'm not concerned. But I mean, you just saw like this past weekend, there's going to be guys that get bumps and bruises. And there I would get a little leery if you just have to feel like, all right, you have no choice but to only stick with 2, or you do involve a third that is just a little bit less of a proven thing or a lower upside situation. But I mean, I would think they'd be able to survive with just a 2-back rotation if something does happen.
Yeah, I want to know what college football team, maybe outside of some triple option teams, go into a game saying, you know what, we need to play 6 backs. We need to play 5 backs. We need to play 4. 3 is what you go into with the game. That's what if you're a really good program, if you can go in with 3 as Notre Dame does, that's very good shape. Now, if an emergency does occur, Jafar Armstrong is not a bad option to have. Let's not forget that he came into this season with the most rushing yards of any returning back, with over 505, and the most most receptions, excluding Ben Skoranek. I'm talking just strictly in a Notre Dame uniform. He had 27. So it's not like would be a novice at that position. This is a guy who was supposed to be the starter in 2019 at the running back position. And in his debut in 2018, his first college game, when Dexter Williams is suspended and others maybe aren't as ready to go, he scores 2 touchdowns against a very good Michigan defense. So that is not a bad 4th option to have. Kendall Abdur-Rahman was a fantastic runner. He was used mainly in that capacity in high school, even though his position was quarterback. But he ran for like over 2,400 yards his last 2 seasons, sophomore. Let's not forget, in the preseason, when there were some injuries, they also used one of the current linebackers, Osita Ekwonu, in the backfield as well, just in case for some emergency situations, which is occurring. And we've seen also this coaching staff is very resourceful at being able to use running backs. You saw it with Braden Lindsey on the jet sweeps last year. You saw Avery Davis take a 28-yard or 29-yard, I think, something like that. Yeah, 29 yards against Boston College on a quick pitch there, jet sweeps. I could see Lawrence Keys maybe taking a few there. And look, Ian Book is somebody, a lot of plays are designed for him as well in the run. So I don't think by any means they're destitute. Everyone's going to have a concern about, well, if you get injured, what happens here? But nobody goes into a game saying, okay, we're going to play 5, 6 running backs.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. And then that's why I would say, like, all right, let's say there's an injury to one of those three primary guys. I would even venture to guess, like, they're just going to roll with two instead of trying to elevate somebody else. And Jafar, I know that, I mean, I'm a little surprised that he's been entirely phased out, at least before he moved to a receiver. But, I mean, he'd been a screen or third down back for pass protection with a couple of big catches there. But I don't know. I think you lose a little bit of the burst in vision there. So I would just say, I would imagine it just goes to, we're riding with two guys, whoever is, minus whoever was injured in some hypothetical situation.
I guess I'm kind of throwing out a ridiculous question. I mean, you guys answered it very well, but it's like, well, offensive line, right? You have 15, 16 scholarship guys because it's 5 spots. So if one goes down, you have plenty. But like, you're gonna have 15 scholarship running backs to appease my worries here. Like, that's ridiculous. So
No, of course not.
you feel good with the 3, and then your emergency options if something is to happen, like Lou mentioned. Osita, look, he played running back in high school in North Carolina, and he's done some cross training there. You guys mentioned Kendall, Abdur-Rahman, and of course Jafar Armstrong. That 2018 Michigan game, pop that on, and you'll remember that he was a pretty solid back. Then we will move to next segment here, talking about Notre Dame's remaining schedule, guys. Fighting Irish 8-0. Can't really believe we haven't mentioned this yet. Number 2 team in the country. Yeah, still number 2 team in the country. I remember on our live show on Saturday, we had people asking, "Oh, do you think Notre Dame might move down?" Or nope. You beat Boston College by 14. You're locked in there. I'm sorry. The question was if after the bye week, could Notre Dame move in or move down after a bye week? Nope. Alabama moved up to the number 1 spot after a bye week a couple weeks ago, so I think those should be okay here. So we have the schedule pulled up here. I'll read it for our podcast audience. Notre Dame has a bye week this week. Go at North Carolina, November 27th. That's Black Friday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Syracuse at home, 2:30. The last home game of the year, guys. Can you already believe that? And then December 12th is at Wake Forest. Time is to be determined. And that was the game that should have been played in September, but was pushed back to that open December 12th date due to COVID-19 concerns. The reason that December 12th date was open was for this exact reason, if something needed to be delayed. So Notre Dame and Wake were able to push that back. So I will ask this question to Lou. Could a bye week come at a more perfect time for this Notre Dame team? We just mentioned, look, Sibo, when he went down on Saturday, it did not look good. Coach Kelly said in his press conference that he was okay. But then, look, Kyron had a bruising game against Clemson and was beat around a good bit against Boston College. So just how well-timed is this bye week, Lou?
Well, there's a number of factors with the bye week as well. This is also final exams week at Notre Dame. And whenever final exams were held in December, as it has in the past, all sports teams were shut down as far as scheduling with that week. There were no games scheduled ever. So, and practices were kind of not necessarily optional, but it was understood if you needed to study for a final exam or whatever, you weren't required to be there. It was more so workout type deals there. So that's one of the first things I thought of when they were restructuring the schedule is, let's see, the semester ends November 20th. That's this coming Friday. So the exams are 16th through the 20th. That's an awfully difficult week to prepare for a game on November 21st. Sometimes it's difficult enough with midterm exams in the past in October. That's been an issue at times. So you're not only talking from a physical standpoint, from recuperating and recharging the batteries, but also just where you can lock in more so on the exam weeks this week, where you don't have to concentrate on an opponent. You can still work out, weight lift, and have some regular practices as Brian Kelly stated, but there's also the knowledge that you can take time off here as well if needed. And Notre Dame, if you look at the last decade, they've been very good at strategically placing the bye week in mid-October, right when midterms are taking place. So for this to fall at the time it does, right on final examinations and after a pretty arduous last 6 weeks or so, mentally and physically with the COVID, yeah, it's a good time. It's about as good a time as you could have expected.
Has anyone ever said a bye week has come at a bad time, especially in November after 8 games? No, I don't think
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
But you're right,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes there was the theory that when you're a team that is on a roll, you don't want to break the routine. It's like you have that routine going. It's like, okay, come in, watch film on Sunday, do this on Monday, have the hard practices Tuesday and Wednesday, review on Thursday, walk through Friday, win on Saturday. Boom, boom, boom. We're creatures of habit. So if that gets disrupted, it's sort of like Rain Man when you see the book out of place. So who knows how that's going to happen. So, last year Notre Dame had a bye week before Michigan.
Don't mention. Oh, I was about to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that didn't help, but Notre Dame kind of became the infighting Irish with the staff that week, and a lot of things went wrong, which I'm not expecting this year. I think there's a cohesion and unity that is really in great place here.
Yeah, I've never quite bought into the disrupting a good roll thing on a bye week. I mean, if you're good, you'll be good. And Lou, you would obviously know this a lot better than I would. And yeah, you don't have to think about the top of your head, but especially like, let's say you have a bye where, all right, open week, and then you come out and play like this year's Syracuse, like just a bad team. It's like, all right, you're not going to have any problems with them. But you'd also, and sometimes, yeah, it's nice to have it before a good opponent like North Carolina is. But yeah, I don't think it's ever a situation where you find bad timing, but I think this one is particularly good.
Think about it. This is going to be almost like a month long bowl prep. It's like bowl preparations. When you prepare for a bowl, you're done with finals. All you need to concentrate now is football, football, football. You can devote as much time to it as you want off the field. You don't have to worry about homework and academics and all. So these next 4 weeks, it's sort of like a bowl preparation every week.
You mentioned the next few weeks will go a long way to December 19th ACC Championship game. So I'm going to pull up the standings here. Notre Dame is 7-0 in the ACC. That's best for that's the best in the conference. And then below the Irish is Clemson and Miami, both at 6-1. Of course, Miami was blown out at home to Clemson in October, so Clemson has the tiebreaker advantage. And then you have North Carolina there at 6-2. I think that's the only 4 teams really worth mentioning in the ACC. So there's the ACC standings. Look, Notre Dame should not. I mean, if they're gonna fall to a team these next 3 games, you would imagine it would be North Carolina. They have the offensive firepower. Look, Wake Forest is a pretty good offensive team too. But Syracuse has looked good at times this year as well. But guys, what if Notre Dame does lose? We'll send this to Patrick first. If Notre Dame does fall somewhere along the road, do they still have a really good chance to meet Clemson in the ACC championship game, or Miami or another team?
Yes, because of that head-to-head win against Clemson. They're 3-way tiebreakers. Let's just assume for a minute that everybody has one loss between Clemson, Miami, and Notre Dame. Are kind of a mess. The first thing they'll go to is combined head-to-head win percentage among the tied teams. Notre Dame would be 1-0 against Miami and Clemson. Clemson would be 1-1. Miami would be 0-1. Notre Dame and Clemson are in. There you go. Situation over. So that is a little bit less stressful than it seems, even though if you go down the list, like I said, it can get to be a pretty messy thing. But yeah, that Clemson win over Miami kind of looms large there. But also, of course, Notre Dame beating Clemson. As soon as that happened, you had to feel really, really good about getting in there, even if they took a loss. And who knows, this might not even end up being a situation. Miami plays North Carolina still, and Miami's going to have having a little issues here with some virus situations where I believe that this week's game was called off, moved it to December 19th if they're not in the title game. So it could be a thing where the top two teams are determined by who has the two highest win percentages. If everybody is if Clemson and Notre Dame are 9-1 and Miami's 8-1. All right, 8-1, obviously lower win percentage than 9-1, so that's that. So as long as, again, even if Notre Dame takes a loss, it's still going to be in a pretty good spot for the ACC championship. But you don't want to do that, obviously, because the point here is to make the playoff. I wouldn't think that Notre Dame could lose to North Carolina and lose in the ACC title game and still make it. It's basically just put yourself in the situation where a loss in the ACC title game doesn't take you out of the playoff race. And if you do that, getting there obviously is not going to be a problem.
I mean, guys, if Notre Dame does lose, then the ACC championship, let's say they do fall to UNC, ACC championship game is then an absolute must win, obviously, to make it. But like you mentioned, Patrick, it would be a really interesting scenario. Clemson wins out. The rest of the games is scheduled, including the ACC championship game. Could Notre Dame get in as a one-loss team, just coming off of a loss to Clemson and getting that split? Before we go to Lou with that comment, I just want to make sure we've had up on the screen this entire time promo code Nike75. It's probably about time I tell you what the heck that means. Go to blueandgold.com, everybody, and you will see a big banner there that explains this detail. Click on that, and you can read the entire article. But here's the gist. Use that promo code when you sign up. You get a 25% discount on the first year of your annual subscription at blueandgold.com. I believe the annual sub is $9,900. Somewhere in between there, maybe $99.95. So that gets you 25% off the first year, and you get a $75 Nike gift card to use online or in stores. Again, go to blueandgold.com, and you have all of the information there. If you want to reach out to me personally about any questions about that, the promo, my email's msinger@blueandgold.com. Fumbled through that one, guys, but we're back. Picked up the fumble. So, Lou, do you think that is a plausible thing that Notre Dame falls in the ACC championship game after beating North Carolina, Syracuse, and Wake, and can still make the playoff? Obviously, you would want to know who are the other one-loss teams? Did they win a championship game?
Yeah, it is absolutely plausible. The only fly in the ointment, if what you say all comes to a fruition, where Notre Dame wins the final 3 regular season games, and then let's say loses to Clemson in the ACC championship, I still think it's Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. And the only fly in the ointment is if Florida were to upset Alabama in the SEC championship game, provided that Florida doesn't get knocked off along the way either. If Florida beats Alabama, then they're probably the second SEC team to go in with one defeat. Alabama's not going to be left out. Clemson with one loss is not going to be left out. So then it would come down to Ohio State and Notre Dame. And let's say if Ohio State were to lose to, won't lose to Michigan, I don't think. But if it were to somewhere get
lose to the top 10 Indiana Hoosiers.
Yeah. How about them Hoosiers?
I
They
don't see
could
that
make a
happening.
movie out of that. But let's say even Wisconsin loses but beats Ohio State in the championship game. Well, you're not gonna. I don't see them taking a 6-1 team over an 11-1 Notre Dame team. So it's those 4 teams. It's theirs to lose there. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame for the college football playoff. And like I said, the fly in the ointment would be Florida.
Just assume that Notre Dame makes it with no no losses, of course. Just don't get blown out. That's it. Just don't get blown out, and
Yeah.
they should be good. I can't imagine anything in the Pac-12 would have a team make it through undefeated,
What if they do?
and I still would have a hard time believing and hard time seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would not seem right to put in a Pac-12 team that played 6 or 7 games. I think the one way maybe they would do it is, let's say, if Clemson won by, let's say, a 30-3 type margin, like they did in the playoff, where the last memory is always going to be the freshest for committee and other people, and it's like, okay, let's give somebody else a chance, because they also would not want to see a third Notre Dame Clemson game. I think potentially in the playoff. Although I've been projecting that could be the first time where we see 2 teams playing 3 times in a season.
I don't know. I wouldn't object to seeing 2 more versions of what we did on November 7th. I'm not sure that many others would either.
All right, we're going to move to, as we wrap down the video, we'll take about 10 minutes or so to discuss answers or questions from the message board. We'll go first to blueandgold.com from Groggy Grizzly. He says, what is the biggest surprise of the season so far? There really could be a lot of different things you could answer with that, but does anyone want to chime in first? What's your biggest surprise of the season so far? College football-wise, or probably more specifically, we're going to talk about Notre Dame.
Yeah, I'll go specific Notre Dame and appease to the question asker here. How about Kurt Heinisch? He's second on the team in tackles for loss. He's got 7 of them this year. He was rightfully readjusted with a sack from this game, most recently against Boston College. I mean, one of the things I was a little curious about is, are they going to get consistent disruption from the interior line? I'm not really sure that was a thing they could really rely on a year ago, but the answer has absolutely been yes. And I don't think you can look and find, okay, what's been a bigger reason than that, than number 41. So I don't know if I would say, all right, huge surprise. I mean, you expected him to be a reliable player, but the level of disruption, I mean, okay, maybe that's a little above and beyond what you might have expected.
For me, gosh, just having college football in itself, and the fact that the ACC, my gosh, you look at that top 25 this week, there's only 3 Power 5 conference schools that have played 8 games, and all 3 are in the ACC: Clemson, Notre Dame, and Miami. And Miami's kind of been hit with the COVID. They've had their next 2 games postponed and have to be realigned. But with everything that's gone on, just to get to this point with 8 games, after that postponement of the Wake Forest game, I was just thinking, okay, here it comes. It's going to be just suddenly shut down like the NCAA tournament was last year, and it's just going to be too much to overcome. So just to get to this point, but individually, Kyren Williams, what he's done at that running back position, it's not so much just the stats where, okay, he's been doing great in that area. He's brought an attitude. He's brought a swagger. I'm going to take you back a little bit. It's sort of like what Chris Zorich did with that 88 Notre Dame defense when they won the national title. It's like, this is a different kind of cat. This is, he brings something not only physically, but he brings an attitude. The way he finishes runs, I think it's just contagious to the overall physicality of this team. And every year we hear the same thing. We're going to run it. We're going to be physical. We're going to pound it. And, then when push comes to shove, in a manner of speaking, it doesn't come to fruition. But man, you tell me in the preseason that Notre Dame's going to outrush Clemson 208 to, I think, what was it, 34 yards? You say, wow, that's quite a change. Usually it's Notre Dame that ends up with that 34 in these type of marquee settings. So just the overall shift in the mentality, and I think Kyren Williams has helped so much in that area. There's just an attitude. It's led by the offensive line. That's where they hung their hat on. But to have, we were all expecting, okay, Chris Tyree can maybe make an impact, and Jafar Armstrong has the experience. Jameer Smith is the physical type of guy. And, Sebo has experience, but Kyron coming out the way he has, when you build championship level teams, you always need that kind of, wow, where did he come from type of players. And, Javon McKinley kind of qualifies in that area too. And Avery Davis,
Yep.
you need a number of those, 4 or 5 guys where it's like, wow, what the heck happened there? And maybe even Ian Book falls into that category as far as, whoa, he's taken it to this level. And you need about, like I said, 4, 5, 6 of those if you're going to be a champion.
The biggest surprise for me was Kyle Hamilton. No, just kidding. No, just
Said
kidding.
nobody.
Yeah, exactly. This is a question. We'll take one more from the message board here. We'll get into YouTube comments from RRH1. He says, Lou, Coach Kelly recently said that this 2020 team has more talent than the 2012 team. Do you agree? RRH1 says, I'm not sure I agree.
From 1 to 22, I'm not sure I agree either. But I think what Coach Kelly was speaking to was 1 through 85, the depth aspect. You look at that, heck, you have Stephon Tuitt, you have Zach Martin, you have Tyler Athleton. Oh, yeah, you had the Heisman runner-up, Manti Te'o. And, Kavari Russell was a freshman. And, Theo Riddick is still the standard of running, blocking, receiving for running backs in the Brian Kelly era. You had a lot of great individual talent, not even including Lewis Nix and Chris Watt. So from 1 through 22, the 22 stars, I would say they're comparable, maybe a little edge in star power to the 12 team. But when you're talking 1 through 85, it doesn't have to be that deep, 1 through 60, the way you're able to rotate 9 guys along the defensive line, the way you're able to interchange Bo Bauer and Drew White, the way you're able to infuse some nickel packages and expand on some areas that you want to do there. When you can get a Josh Lugg into the lineup and really not have a significant drop off, when you can have, tight ends like Tommy Tremble and Michael Mayer, George Takis, a 4-star who would be starting at so many places, for crying out loud. Right. Brock Wright was a top 50 recruit. He's like the third option. You lose a Braden Lindsay, you lose a Kevin Austin as Skronik is out, and guys like Avery Davis and Javon McKinley, who was a top 60 recruit, emerging that way. I would say maybe the one area quarterback, if Ian Book were to go down, when Everett Golson struggled in 2012, Tommy Rees was a very, very good and reliable option, a steadying force to have. That's the one area where you say that's where maybe they're the most fragile. But when you're looking at from 1 through 60 depth and overall contributions from so many people, I give the edge this year.
Take a question from J Jobs here. Will Notre Dame win the national championship? Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think, Patrick?
Oh, come on. You put me on the spot here. A lose situation. I don't know. I mean, can I pick against Alabama? No, but this team sure feels like it has a really good shot at beating anyone or at least giving anybody a game. I mean, I don't know. At least I'll say this. It's hard to look at these guys and say, oh, yeah, they get blown out by that team. I will say that. And if that's the case, you will be in a favorable position because there are very few teams you can say that about. I'll just leave it at that.
It's a pretty impossible question to answer right now. I mean, I threw you on the spot.
If we knew these, we'd be on an island somewhere as far as just purchasing our own island and not have to answer such a question. I want to just add one thing. We talk about the 2012, we talk about the 2020. Probably the most pure talented team in the Brian Kelly era was the 2015 team. You had a second-round quarterback with Deshaun Kaiser, a first-round speedster with Will Fuller. You had a all-pro offensive lineman with Ronnie Stanley, an all-pro offensive lineman with Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, a first-round pick, Nick Martin, a second-round pick. You go down the line there. Defensively, a Jalen Smith, just so many people there that you can point to, Sheldon Day, etc. That might have been the most talented starting lineup. But again, when we talk purely about depth and just volume and the number of people who can contribute, and I think an esprit de corps plus overall coaching, because in 2015, the big snag was that you had Brian Van Gorder as the defensive coordinator, and there are just a lot of problems there with the defensively. When you talk about with a Clark Lee, Tommy Reese, even though he's in his first season, that chemistry that he has with Brian Kelly on that same page, when you take the whole thing into account, this definitely has the makings to be Brian Kelly's best team. And I think, yeah, it is national championship caliber. Whether it wins it, I mean, who knows? But the greatest thing, though, too, is those teams, 2012, 2015, 2017, there was that always element of doubt is, can we beat these teams? We always lose to the Alabamas. We get blown out of the Clemsons. When you beat a Clemson like this, suddenly now there's a whole different confidence level that boogeyman has been beaten. That doesn't mean you might beat him again or you won't face him again, but you don't go in anymore thinking that you can't win these type of games. And I remember with the 73 national champions and the 88 national champions, the boogeyman in 73 was USC. You hadn't beaten them in 7 years. The boogeyman in 88 were the mighty Miami Hurricanes. You had lost the last 4 meetings to them 133-20. And once you beat them, there was just this overwhelming feeling of now we can take on anybody. And I think that Clemson victory is just the impact that this could have on the overall attitude and confidence with the team. I think it can't be understated.
Well,
so to go back a minute to one thing you quickly said, Lou, what do you think the level of Schadenfreude is of Notre Dame fans watching Brian Van Gorder's Bowling Green defense give up 100 points in 2 games? I think it's pretty high.
Look, you don't want to file. It didn't work out. Obviously, the guy won the Frank Broyles Assistant Coach of the Year in Georgia. He's had his great times and everything, but something's not clicking anymore. The Schadenfreude, I'm taking more part in is with Michigan and Penn State.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that is going to do it for our first episode of Irish Huddle Live. We appreciate everyone who has watched live. We appreciate everybody watching a replay on YouTube, and of course our awesome podcast audience. We appreciate you as well. Leave us that 5-star review. Please like this video. Leave us the tip, super chat, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff really, really helps us out. And of course, use promo code Nike75 at blueandgold.com. We will catch you next week, next Monday night, and of course, go to blueandgold.com. You can catch Mike, Patrick, and Lou every day on the website. So again, appreciate you guys watching or listening to the show.